Have you ever looked at your plate, felt proud of eating healthy, and never once wondered if those same foods might be quietly damaging your kidneys right now? If you're over 50, eating whole grains, brown rice, or whole wheat bread because you were told they protect your health, what I'm about to share may stop you in your tracks. Because kidney damage doesn't scream, it doesn't hurt, and it doesn't warn you, it happens silently. Test by test, meal by meal, until one day the numbers change and nothing feels the same again. I'm Dr. Mark Isles, and after decades of working with patients who never saw kidney disease coming, I can tell you this with absolute certainty. Some of the foods most Americans trust every single day are accelerating kidney decline faster than age ever could. The danger isn't obvious, and that's exactly what makes it so serious. Millions of people feel fine while their kidneys are slowly losing their ability to filter blood-balanced minerals and protect the rest of the body from toxic overload. But here's the part that most people never hear, and the reason you should stay with me until the very end. Protecting your kidneys does not mean starving yourself, cutting out everything you love, or following extreme diets. It means understanding one critical truth about everyday grains, learning which ones quietly strain your kidneys, and knowing the safer alternatives that can immediately reduce the burden on these vital organs before the damage becomes permanent. And once you see this clearly, you'll never look at a simple bowl of grains the same way again. Let's start with the grain most people trust without question: brown rice. For years, it's been marketed as the smart choice, the upgrade from white rice, the food you switch to when you decide to take your health seriously. High fiber, more nutrients, less processed. That's what most Americans believe. And that belief is exactly why brown rice quietly becomes dangerous when kidneys are no longer working at full strength. I remember a patient, early 60s, disciplined, health conscious, who proudly told me he had replaced all white rice with brown rice years ago. He exercised, avoided sugar, followed every guideline he'd been given. Yet his lab results kept getting worse. Creatinine slowly crept up. Potassium edged higher. He felt fine, so he assumed everything was under control. It wasn't until we looked closely at the details that the pattern became clear. Here's the science most people are never told. 1 cup of cooked brown rice contains roughly 150 milligrams of potassium compared to about 55 milligrams in white rice. On paper, that difference seems small, but kidneys don't look at single meals, they deal with cumulative load. If you're already trying to stay under a 2,000 milligram daily potassium limit, brown rice quietly eats up that allowance faster than you realize, especially when it appears in multiple meals a day. And there's another issue that rarely gets discussed: arsenic. Rice absorbs arsenic from soil and water more efficiently than most crops, and in brown rice, arsenic concentrates in the outer bran layer, the very part that makes it whole. Healthy kidneys can usually flush small amounts out. Compromised kidneys can't. Over time, arsenic accumulates, adding oxidative stress and toxic burden to organs already struggling to filter blood properly. Long-term exposure has been linked to kidney damage, cardiovascular disease, and increased cancer risk. And that risk matters far more when filtration slows with age. This doesn't mean brown rice is bad in general. It means context matters. In early kidney stages, small portions occasionally may be tolerated. But once kidney function declines further, brown rice stops being a health upgrade and starts becoming unnecessary pressure on a system that can't afford extra strain. This is why many renal specialists quietly recommend switching back to white rice, not because it's trendy, but because it's gentler. And here's the part most people find surprising. Choosing white rice instead doesn't mean giving up flavor or satisfaction. Simple cooking techniques like rinsing thoroughly using aromatics or low-sodium broth can make white rice deeply comforting while dramatically reducing mineral load. Sometimes protecting your kidneys isn't about eating better foods. It's about eating smarter foods. But understanding brown rice is only the first layer of the problem. Because there's another everyday grain one people eat without hesitation that can drain your kidney's mineral budget even faster, often without anyone noticing at all. And once you see it, you may never look at your sandwich the same way again. And this is where many people get caught completely off guard. After switching from white rice to brown rice, the next healthy upgrade almost everyone makes is whole wheat bread. It feels harmless, responsible, even virtuous. Toast in the morning, a sandwich at lunch, simple habits repeated every day without a second thought. But for kidneys under stress, whole wheat bread doesn't whisper danger. It quietly accumulates it. I once worked with a woman in her late 50s who did everything right, or so she thought. She didn't eat fast food. She avoided sugar. She proudly chose whole wheat bread because every doctor, every label, every nutrition article told her it was better. Yet her phosphorus levels kept climbing, and no one could explain why. When we finally broke down her daily intake, the answer wasn't dramatic. It was bread, just bread, every single day. Here's the science that rarely makes it into mainstream advice. One slice of whole wheat bread contains roughly 70 milligrams of phosphorus and about 80 milligrams of potassium. That doesn't sound alarming until you do the math. 2 slices for a sandwich means 140 milligrams of phosphorus in one meal. Toast in the morning, another sandwich later in the day, and suddenly you're pushing 280 milligrams from bread alone. For someone in stage 3 or stage 4 kidney disease with a daily phosphorus limit around 800 to 1,000 milligrams, that's a massive chunk of your entire allowance gone before dinner even starts. And here's the real issue. Bread doesn't give you much in return for that cost. It's mostly calories and carbohydrates. It doesn't provide the kind of high-quality protein or essential fats that justify spending your limited mineral budget. When kidneys are weakened, every milligram matters. Spending it on bread instead of nutrient-dense foods is like burning fuel without going anywhere. This is why many renal dietitians quietly steer patients away from whole wheat products, even though they hesitate to say it out loud. Not because whole wheat is evil, but because kidneys under strain need efficiency, not ideology. White bread, especially fermented options like sourdough made from refined flour, typically contains significantly less phosphorus and potassium while still delivering satisfaction and comfort. And there's a simple trick that changes how people feel about this switch. Toast white bread until it's golden and crisp, then lightly rub it with a cut garlic clove while it's still warm. The natural oils infuse the surface, creating deep flavor without adding mineral salt or additives. Suddenly, the bread feels intentional, not like a downgrade, but a smarter choice. This is the pattern you need to start noticing. Foods we're told are better often become harmful when kidney function changes. And whole wheat bread is one of the biggest examples of that quiet disconnect between advice and reality. But understanding bread still isn't the full picture, because there's another grain praised as a superfood that pushes kidney strain even further by adding a different kind of pressure most people never consider. And that's where the real danger accelerates. Now, this is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable for many people, because quinoa isn't just seen as healthy, it's seen as elite, a superfood. Gluten-free, high protein, the grain people switch to when they believe they're doing everything right. And yet for kidneys already under pressure, quinoa often becomes the point where silent damage starts accelerating faster than anyone expects. I remember a man in his early 60s who told me almost proudly that he had cleaned up his diet. He replaced bread with quinoa bowls, added quinoa to salads, even used it as a rice substitute at dinner. He felt lighter, more disciplined, more in control. But his lab work told a different story. His creatinine was creeping up, and more concerning protein began appearing in his urine. Nothing dramatic, nothing painful, just slow, steady decline. Here's what most people never hear about quinoa. 1 cup of cooked quinoa contains around 8 grams of protein, along with significantly higher amounts of phosphorus and potassium compared to refined grains. Protein itself isn't the enemy, but when kidneys are damaged, how much and where it comes from matters more than people realize. Excess protein increases pressure inside the kidney's filtering units, a process called glomerular hyperfiltration. Think of it like forcing water through a damaged filter at high speed. The harder you push, the faster it breaks down. This is especially dangerous if you already have protein in your urine. That's a sign the filters are leaking. Adding high-protein grains like quinoa forces those filters to work even harder, worsening the leak over time. Studies in nephrology have consistently shown that reducing unnecessary protein load, especially from plant grains that also carry minerals, can slow kidney decline and improve lab stability. The irony is painful. People choose quinoa believing it protects them, when in reality it may be exhausting their kidneys faster than simpler foods ever would. For those in early kidney stages with stable labs, small portions, perhaps 1/3 of a cup once or twice a week may still be tolerated. But once kidney disease progresses, Quinoa stops being a superfood and starts becoming a silent stressor. The safer strategy is surprisingly simple. Use grains for energy, not protein. Reserve your limited protein capacity for higher quality sources that deliver more benefit with less waste. Plain white rice or white pasta provides carbohydrates without flooding the kidneys with excess protein or minerals. Add flavor through herbs, citrus, and healthy fats, not through nutritional overload. This shift isn't about deprivation, it's about precision. When kidneys weaken, the margin for error shrinks. And quinoa, despite its reputation, often sits on the wrong side of that margin. But here's where things start to turn hopeful, because not all grains work against you. In fact, one of the most misunderstood grains in modern nutrition may actually be one of the safest choices for struggling kidneys. And once you understand why, it changes how you see healthy eating completely. After everything you've just heard about brown rice, whole wheat bread, and quinoa, this is usually the moment people feel confused, sometimes even frustrated, because the question naturally comes next: so what am I supposed to eat? And this is where the answer surprises almost everyone. One of the simplest foods in the world, white rice, may actually be one of the kindest choices you can make for stressed kidneys. I remember a patient who hesitated when I suggested switching back to white rice. She looked at me and said, "Isn't that going backwards?" That reaction is common because for years we've been taught that white rice is inferior, empty, something to avoid. But her labs told a different story. Within a few months of making the switch, her potassium stabilized, her phosphorus stopped creeping upward, and for the first time in years, her numbers stopped getting worse. Here's the science behind why this happens. 1 cup of cooked white rice contains roughly 55 milligrams of potassium, about 35 milligrams of phosphorus, and only 4 grams of protein. Compare that to brown rice or quinoa, and the difference becomes impossible to ignore. White rice delivers energy without forcing the kidneys to process excess minerals or protein waste. For kidneys that are already struggling, that matters more than fiber content or nutrition labels. Think of your kidneys like a damaged filter. When the filter is new, it can handle thicker, dirtier water. But once it's worn down, the smartest move isn't to push harder, it's to run cleaner water through it. White rice does exactly that. It fuels the body while giving the kidneys a chance to breathe. And no, this doesn't mean meals have to be bland or boring. Flavor doesn't come from minerals, it comes from technique. Rinsing rice thoroughly, cooking it with herbs, adding a squeeze of lemon, or pairing it with healthy fats can transform white rice into something deeply satisfying without increasing kidney strain. This is why white rice appears again and again in renal-friendly diets around the world, from Asia to the Mediterranean. The deeper lesson here is important. Healthy eating isn't about moral choices, good food versus bad food. It's about matching food to your body's current capacity. When kidney function declines, simplicity becomes strength. White rice isn't a compromise, it's a strategic decision. But even with white rice as a foundation, there's another refined grain that often gets unfairly criticized, yet plays an equally powerful role in protecting kidney function when used correctly. And that grain may be hiding in plain sight on dinner plates everywhere. Once people accept that white rice can actually help stressed kidneys, the next question almost always follows: what about pasta? And this is where decades of nutrition messaging have done real damage. White pasta has been labeled as empty, unhealthy something to avoid at all costs. But for kidneys that are already overwhelmed, white pasta quietly becomes one of the most practical, kidney-friendly grains available. I think of a retired teacher I worked with who loved Italian food, but had almost completely cut it out after her kidney diagnosis. She believed pasta was the reason her labs were worsening. When we reintroduced small portions of plain white pasta, carefully prepared without heavy sauces, something unexpected happened. Her phosphorus levels stabilized, her energy improved, and most importantly, she stopped feeling like her life revolved around restriction. Here's the science that explains why this works. 1 cup of cooked white pasta contains roughly 30 to 40 milligrams of phosphorus, less than 60 milligrams of potassium, and only 7 grams of protein. That profile is remarkably gentle compared to whole grain or protein-enriched pastas, which can double or even triple those mineral loads. For kidneys struggling to clear phosphorus and nitrogen waste, white pasta offers calories without punishment. This is why renal dietitians often recommend plain pasta during later stages of kidney disease. It provides energy that prevents muscle breakdown, which is crucial because when the body lacks fuel, it starts breaking down muscle tissue, creating more waste for the kidneys to process. In that sense, white pasta isn't indulgent, it's protective. The key, of course, is how it's used. White pasta works best when it's not overloaded with cheese, processed meats, or high-phosphate sauces. Simple combinations: olive oil, garlic, herbs. A squeeze of lemon delivers satisfaction without triggering mineral overload. Portion control matters, but fear does not. When eaten intentionally, white pasta becomes a tool, not a threat. There's also a psychological benefit that's easy to overlook. Allowing foods like pasta back into the diet reduces stress, and stress itself raises cortisol, blood pressure, and inflammatory signals that worsen kidney outcomes. Sometimes the best dietary decision isn't just about nutrients, it's about sustainability. At this point, a pattern should be becoming clear. The grains most criticized by modern diet culture often turn out to be the safest when kidney function declines. But there's one final grain less talked about, often misunderstood, that sits quietly between refined and whole, and when used correctly, it may offer flexibility without the risks you'd expect. And that's where this conversation truly comes full circle. After white rice and white pasta begin to change the way people think about safe grains, there's one more option that often flies under the radar: quiet, uncontroversial, and surprisingly effective for protecting kidney function. Couscous doesn't get headlines. It isn't labeled a superfood. And that's exactly why it works so well when kidneys need stability, not extremes. I remember a patient who told me she was exhausted, not physically, but mentally. She felt trapped between foods she was afraid of and foods she was tired of eating. Rice felt repetitive. Pasta felt indulgent. Couscous became her middle ground. Light, quick to prepare, and easy to flavor. Without heavy sauces, it helped her stay consistent without feeling deprived. And consistency, more than perfection, is what finally steadied her lab results. Here's what makes couscous different. 1 cup of cooked couscous contains roughly 60 milligrams of potassium, about 45 milligrams of phosphorus, and around 6 grams of protein. That places it well below most whole grains and far gentler than protein-heavy options like quinoa. For kidneys managing mineral overload, this balance matters. Couscous provides energy while keeping phosphorus and potassium predictable, 2 factors that directly influence creatinine stability and long-term kidney stress. Another advantage is how couscous behaves in real meals. Because it's light and absorbent, it pairs naturally with low-sodium broths, herbs, olive oil, and vegetables prepared in kidney-friendly ways. It doesn't demand cheese, processed meats, or heavy sauces to taste satisfying. That makes it easier to build meals that support kidney health without constantly fighting cravings or fatigue. But there's a deeper reason couscous works so well. It encourages moderation. Unlike dense whole grains that push mineral intake quickly, couscous spreads its nutritional load more gently across the day. That steadiness reduces sudden spikes in phosphorus and potassium, spikes that damage kidneys struggle to correct. Over time, fewer spikes mean less inflammation, less stress on filtering units, and a better chance of slowing disease progression. At this point, the pattern should be clear. The safest grains for compromised kidneys aren't the ones marketed as superior, they're the ones that respect the kidney's limits. Couscous represents that philosophy, perfectly simple, adaptable, and forgiving. But even understanding all 6 of these grains still isn't the most important takeaway, because there's one final principle often overlooked that determines whether these choices truly protect your kidneys or quietly fail you. And that's what we need to talk about next. Before you close this video, I want you to hear this clearly. If you're watching right now, it means you still care about your kidneys, and that already puts you ahead of where many people realize the danger. You don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need fear or extreme rules. What truly protects your kidneys is awareness, consistency, and making gentler choices that respect what your body can handle today. If this video helped you see food and your kidneys a little more clearly, do yourself a favor and save this video so you can come back to it when life gets busy or habits start to slip. And make sure to subscribe to this channel, because every week we share clear science-based medical insights designed to help you protect your kidneys, stabilize your labs, and avoid unnecessary complications before they happen. Most importantly, don't lose hope. Kidneys respond to care, they respond to smarter choices, and even small changes repeated daily can slow decline and protect your quality of life far longer than you might expect. Take this one step at a time, stay informed, and remember you're not alone in this journey.